Hey, I'm Ellen with blackfilm.com, and I'm here with Mia Neal, head of the hair department of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and Matiki Anoff, head of the makeup department for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. How are you, ladies?
I'm
Doing
good,
great.
thank you.
Thank
First,
you.
before I get the interview going, we have to give you some congrats for making the shortlist for the Academy Awards, as well as the long list for the BAFTAs. And also, you were nominated for 2 Makeup Artists and Hairstylist Guild Awards. Is that right?
Yes.
Major congratulations. And also, what I find to be interesting is, if nominated for the Academy Awards, it will be the first time Black artisans are nominated in the hair and makeup category. So, fingers and toes are crossed.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yeah. So, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom is such a special film. I remember when I first watched it, the first thing that came to my mind was this is one of those films that stays in your spirit indefinitely. And so when you first got wind of this project and who all was involved, what were your initial thoughts? What was going on in your head?
Matiki?
Oh, we first, okay. Well, I knew about the project for some time, but they actually didn't greenlight it until possibly 2 weeks before. So it was really quite a scramble.
Okay.
But because I'd heard of it previously, I'd done some research. There was nothing on very, very little. I think Mia says repeatedly there were like 7 pictures of Ma. I found a couple with her in the band, and just really wanted to delve into what was 1927 Chicago like. So that I would say that was where I initially started my research.
Gotcha. What about you, Mia?
I think when I heard about it, we, like Matiki said, I found out about it. We had about 2.5 weeks to prep for it.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, I felt all kinds of ways because George C. Wolfe is directing it and Ann Roth is doing the costumes. And so I've worked with both of them several times before. So I was definitely excited to get back into, something with them. And, that was like my initial thought was like, I was just excited to go and be a part of this project, especially with Denzel producing it, Viola Davis starring in it. Like, I mean, it was across the board, just like, A game. I got to, so it was good. It was a good feeling.
And was this your first time working within a period piece project, or had you done period pieces before?
I have done period piece, and my career started in theater and in opera and dance, and so that's always like period pieces and wigs and things like that. And then I went into working on Broadway, and a lot of that is period pieces. So I would say the majority of my work actually has been period work.
Gotcha. And what about you, Matiki?
Yes, I've done a couple of years earlier. I'd done Fences, which was certainly a period piece, and maybe like 12 years ago, I did Great Debaters with Denzel, both of which Denzel directed, and they were both period pieces. So very familiar with period.
And so this is actually a great segue to my next question, which you started to answer already. What sort of research and planning went into making sure that era was accurately represented? And you already mentioned that you only had about 2 weeks to prep, so that's not a lot of time. And so how challenging was that?
It was extremely, yeah.
Mia.
Oh, well, it was extremely challenging just based off of, the 2-week thing and like trying to do the research. I mean, luckily I have a lot of research already just from doing the 20s, but, always trying to look up Ma Rainey, that was a challenge. There aren't that many things. I found 2 photos. There are 7 that exist of her. I've yet to see all 7 of those photos, but I could only find 2 photos. So as far as Ma goes, a lot of it had to go based off of the descriptions that people gave of her. And then kind of playing a psychological game to figure out, okay, well, what choices would she have made based off of the information that I can find about her? And so And then the rest of the characters, and I mean, the one thing also was like we showed up with, I showed up to Pittsburgh, my assistant and I, with over 100 wigs, because I spoke with casting and they said, listen, there's 2 other things shooting in Pittsburgh right now. All the BG are going to be the first time on film. These are all like people we pulled. They're non-union. And I was like, okay, great. You stop people on the street and say you want to be a part of a Denzel Washington movie. They are coming with hair, nails, makeup, like everything, right? So I had to come prepared to possibly wig every single woman that was going on screen to try to make sure that I was not putting 2019 on that screen, but 1927.
That's right.
So yeah.
And Matiki, what about you?
Oh yeah, I mean, I could not tell you how traumatized the background were when, especially for the tent scene. We took all their makeup off, took out all the nails, all the lashes, extensions, the microblading. We plugged in the ear holes for the guys. And yeah, we just like, no, there's no makeup. So it was a little traumatic for some, but I think they all got into the feel that this was going to be really something special. I think with that tent scene, you were transported back in history. And Mia's brilliant hairstyling. I mean, just solidified everything, along with production design. Of course, we had an incredible DP, but also Anne Roth's costumes. I mean, that scene for me makes the film, because you are literally transported back in time. I felt, for me personally.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree. And that's what kind of made this film super special. It felt authentic. It looked authentic.
Exactly.
Relatable from that perspective. And speaking of different sort of departments working together, I imagine you all had to be in constant communication in order to create a cohesive aesthetic. Can you talk a bit about your experience and how your work informed each other's? I think, Matiki, you started to talk about it, but Mia, in terms of how did makeup or costume inform hair?
Yeah, well, I met with Anne Roth a lot. And also Matiki and I, we shared a trailer.
Yes.
So we were in constant communication.
Yeah.
I mean, it really was like the ebb and flow amongst all the departments was really remarkable.
Seamless.
And like, I think, I always like kind of ebb and flow, but this was like next level as far as the communication, as far as us all being on board, as far as us like really wanting to create an experience for the audience as if they were really, experiencing the real Ma Rainey, which all the descriptions that we got or that we all read individually and came together and discussed was that her audience loved her, don't get me wrong, but her appearance and the things that it was uncomfortable for them at times, like she was always described as an unattractive woman who sweated profusely, who, drip sweat on the crowd, like that type of thing, like that much sweat. And her band, like we wanted to show, like the difference, and Matiki could speak more to that because she was in charge of that sweat and like, making sure Ma sweated the most, but
that's right.
And so I think, just the communication was fantastic amongst all of us. We were always on the same page. And I think we all knew the value of one another, during the project, and knowing that, it was like almost like a domino effect of just like, okay, now pass it to you and you go and this happens. And it was rare. It really was. It was good.
Absolutely. I think everybody was on a level of excellence. The production design was next level. The DP, Tobias, certainly next level. The director, the costume designer. I think everything, it was just a recipe for excellence because everybody was at the top of their game. And I don't know, maybe having less time helped us all because we had to be more vigilant about, oh my God, this has got to be right. In terms of how we worked together, it was great. I got to work with Mia in the trailer, and we just, would we'd discuss, especially Dusty May. Sergio, of course, was doing Viola. And once we determined, okay, this is the direction he's going with Viola, we had to adjust everything around her.
Okay.
I think her makeup was so intense. If we hadn't modified things, she may have looked, you know, like a little crazy, actually, to be honest. And we didn't want anybody to feel that they weren't in this era. We didn't want anything to jump out that took you out of the movie, you know. And as I said, it's the little tiny things. You see a little bit of a tattoo, or you see a guy's earring hole, or, you know, the hair texture isn't correct, or anything like that can take you, especially for us, industry people. Maybe laymen wouldn't notice. We're like this.
Right.
So we had to really, really make sure that that was not going to happen here. We wanted a seamless introduction into that era.
Nice. Mission accomplished. I mean, I thought Ma Rainey's makeup alone was its own character. Like, it deserved its own,
indeed,
you know, its own space, and that, you know, says a lot about makeup artist Sergio Lopez Rivera, and also what everyone else brought to the table. And so we talked about sweat a few minutes ago, and so that's one thing I wanted to have a conversation with you guys about. It was hot, right? It was the summer. You know, it was interesting to see Ma Rainey just fully dressed down in full, you know, long sleeves and coats in the summer. So when you think about summer and makeup, those two things don't go hand in hand. And so what sort of techniques did you have to incorporate to ensure makeup isn't dripping or wigs aren't getting soaked?
I'm going to let Mia answer. I think she just has an incredible description about how she summed up Ma, and I just love when she so I'm going to defer to her on that one.
Yeah, no, it's funny you said about her being fully dressed and clothed. And I think, and that's what I meant about, like, how we all had to kind of fill in all of these characters. Because when we had discussions, we all talked in detail about, like, who these characters are, where they're from. You know, Ma Rainey specifically, you know, she would have been the first generation of her family to be free in this country from enslavement, right? And so she grew up in the rural, you know, South in Georgia. I imagine sharecroppers or something along those lines. Her family, she left there, she changed her name, got married, and had a girlfriend on the side. She, you know, this is a person who, you know, with the gold teeth, she always wore all of her jewelry at once. It wouldn't be uncommon for her to have a ring on every finger. You notice how 1920s, everything fits more close to the face. Ma's hair is large up at the top. Like, everything that she does is sort of to the beat of her own drum, you know, for her to put a fur coat on in the summer, you know what I mean? Like, who wears a fur in the summer? Ma Rainey does, you know? And so I think all of that was just her sort of, you know, saying, and then also, this is a dark-skinned woman, you know, and everybody's labeling her unattractive, right? And so there's a part of her that's so used to people looking at her with discomfort that it's nothing to her anymore. When you see her in that Chicago, when they're in Chicago in the hotel, and it's all the light-skinned Black folks, and they look over like, who is this and what is she, you know, and she has a fur on, and it is like, it's none of that bothers her.
I love
like
that.
She's been looked at like that since she was a child, you know? So it's nothing new. And but she still is going to do what she loves and what she wants. She'll get everything that she wants, which is why the second wig of hers, because there's two wigs that she has. One is made of horsehair, and it's her show wig, right, that we see her perform in. And then the second wig is made of European hair. And it was known that Ma Rainey wore wigs. Didn't want to hide the fact that she was wearing a wig, but I wanted it to be an expensive looking wig, and one that, you know, in my mind, as she walked through the streets every day, you know, she has this certain appearance that she gives people. She probably saw those waves in the magazine. Her own hair won't achieve it. And she said, I want a wig like that, you know? And so now here's this woman who's been denied all these things. And she got this white woman's hair on her head, you know, finger
And
ring.
rocking it well, too.
Right. So it's like, it just all sort of, you know, playing along with the psychology and making sure that we have a complete story, you know, like you have to know why you're making each choice that you're making, or it's going to look fake.
Yeah.
You know, like if you can explain why this has to happen like this and where her mind was when she made these decisions that you're making for her, you fill in all those little blanks and really tell the complete story. People buy it, you know?
That's right.
But if you're just saying, well, that would be cute, that'd be, let's just do, you know, then it's like, now you start getting fake stuff, you know?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I mean, I've always believed that when it comes to hair and makeup, that's the first thing that us as an audience, we see, even before the character starts talking.
That's right.
It sets the tone. And so we're automatically pulled into this character just based on aesthetics. And so, you know, I have a profound admiration and respect for what we do because it sets the tone for the character.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so Matiki, with you and the makeup and the sweat for the band, and so how did you keep all that together?
Yeah, it was really quite a challenge. As I said, once we saw Ma's look, we were like, okay. The original play takes place in the winter, but I think, and I always say that the heat was another layer of oppression. So we wanted to show that, but of course nobody could outsweat Ma because that's, if anything was written about her, that was the one thing, is that she sweated profusely. So I had to really adjust, but then every character had a moment where they sweated more. Of course, Sylvester, when he was under pressure with his stomach, had to sweat more at that time. The owners of the studio and the manager were always sweating because they always felt Ma was leaving. So he was always in a panic, and so he had to sweat.
That's right.
Coleman, I think, was like the unofficial leader of the band. He had to have a little bit more swagger. So we gave him a little less sweat, just to make him a little bit more stylish. The other guys are like sweating all the time, the other two guys. So we really planned out. The only person who didn't sweat was Dusty May, because she was just figuring out how her life was going to be improved in this whole situation and which way she was going to go. So she just like sat back and was cool and was figuring it all out. So Dusty May was like the less sweaty of all. And that's really how we just went for which part was extremely stressful. Of course, Chadwick had an extremely stressful part in his dialogue. So everybody really had a spotlight in that.
Gotcha. And so, Mia, you know, there's this story about this particular wig that came to you in a very, crazy manner. Can you talk a bit about this famous wig and how?
Yes, the horsehair wig.
The horsehair wig.
Right. So Anne Roth, the costume designer, she found in her research that Ma Rainey wore horsehair wigs. And so, you know, because there was such little facts, like anything that we found, it was just imperative that we, you know, execute that. Now, I've never worked with horsehair before. So I went online, found a horsehair dealer, purchased some horsehair and had it, you know, shipped to me. When it arrived, it was covered in manure and lice eggs because I just cut it right off of the horse. But it had been stored away somewhere clearly for a very long time because it was all like caked together and I had to kind of peel it apart. And it's nothing like hair, which I didn't realize. It's actually very wiry. Think more of like a wire brush. Like you could almost make a broom out of it.
Okay.
So it was, each hair was like very thick and coarse. Like I said, it was covered in manure and lice eggs. And so I tried to, but you could only like peel off some at a time. And I'm working with this, and I had gloves on, plastic everywhere. And then each hair could only fit through one hole. You know, one hole could only hold one hair on the lace that I work with, right?
Okay.
Because the lace is so delicate, you don't want to force it, it'll rip. So the entire wig is actually single strand. And yeah, it was, listen, it was definitely one of the more intense things that I've done throughout my career, building that wig, and like having to boil it to try to clean it. And, you know, luckily I did boil it because it actually softened after I boiled it. And so that I used that same technique after I rolled the wig to just, I submerged it in boiling water until the water cooled, and then I baked it in the wig dryer. And come to find out, once that wig was set, it never lost its curl.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right. It was really interesting because then it made sense on why she wore these horsehair wigs. It was like today's synthetic wig. You know, like it kept its set, it maintained the continuity. So I'm sure with her traveling from city to city, you know, being a woman of color, you can't just walk into any salon in 1927 and be serviced.
That's right.
So it was imperative that she had a wig, her performance wig, that she could travel with and open that box, and it looks the same way as when she put it in the box, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And
I
so,
ended up learning something afterwards.
yeah, I can imagine there were lots of things learned through this experience. And so obviously this is a male dominated cast, right?
Yes.
And so when it comes to styling men, you know, makeup and hair, what are some of the differences that you had to go through? For example, I noticed for the men, there were lots of side parts versus slick backs or comb overs. And then with makeup, is it more stressful to make up a man than a woman? What was that experience?
It's not more stressful, but I think people are always under the impression that, oh, you know, men don't take much. Believe me,
That's what I thought. Okay.
they take just as long. Coleman, for instance, had so many tattoos, which is normally not an issue or a problem. We just cover them up. But it is an issue when you are applying sweat, because that lifts the makeup.
Right.
So, and he had loads of ear piercings too, which of course, you know, we had to get rid of. That would take you completely out of the period immediately. So actually the men were quite challenging on with the makeup.
Right, and I could imagine, you know, women we're used to makeup, so we know not to dab or to touch
Yes.
too much. And for men, I can imagine they were constantly.
No, not for actors. I think they're so familiar with it, and that they're just that's not the issue. The issue here really was the sweat. One character, Slow Drag, had mutton chops, so to keep those adhered while he was doing this all the time with the sweat, we just thought every take, oh my God, the thing is just going to come off in the next take, you know? So we'd have to use like a very special glue to keep them on. But George wanted that mutton chop on him. He really liked that for that era, just to show that. And I think this was across the board. We didn't want everybody to look in that era. It never happens. There's always people who get left back. So you really have to think of like a decade back. So the older guys were a little less slick than Coleman and say the younger boy.
Okay. Good point. Good point. And so Mia, like how many haircuts did you all have to do on set?
So, you know, it's funny. I was in a co-department head situation. And so Larry Cherry, who is normally Denzel's barber, he really took care of the men. And I took care of the women. There was one man who wore a wig, the Sturtevant character, and I took care of him. And so other than that, I did the women, the dancers, the background, the, you know, whole gamut. And he took care of the guys. He did a great job. Yes. With the haircuts and, you know, keeping with the time period. And, you know, it was awesome.
And what's the most memorable piece or part of this project that you've held on to?
It was so many.
So many.
There was so many.
I can
What would you say, Matiki?
I think working with you, I'd met you before and we'd worked together, but we hadn't worked together like this. And I just would say the crew, our team, our makeup team. Carl Fullerton, Debbie Young was incredible. Mia, Leah, Taiwan, Larry Cherry. I think it was such an incredible crew. You don't usually get that level of excellence with a 2.5-week prep. It just doesn't happen.
That's incredible.
So yeah, I just think we was surrounded by greatness. Then there was Anne and George, and Denzel always puts a great team together. That's what I would take away from it.
Yeah. I mean, I would have to agree that I think just the overall experience, like all the connections that were made with the people, like, and I mean, it was like, it became like a real family atmosphere. I mean, we all hung out on the weekends. There were like a couple of restaurants that we all ate at, and we all went to brunch or dinners. We'd all run into each other, you know, all throughout the week. And it was just nice. You know, I remember leaving and like, I'm always excited to go back home, but I was like, oh, I'm gonna really miss, you know, the people here. I mean, everybody, the Teamsters, the crafty, like catering. I mean, it was unbelievable.
A really special project.
Yeah. I mean, we all felt it when we were there. Like, I think we made something really magical here because the chemistry amongst us all was just so organic, you know, like it was not forced. We all, it was really good. I mean, I can't stress that enough. It was amazing. And it was hard work. We all worked our butt off. It was hard work. You know, but it's good when you're with people that you don't mind spending 18 hours with.
That certainly helps.
Definitely.
And so, you know, before I let you go, I do have to ask, how did you both get started in your careers? And Matiki, we could start with you.
Okay, I went to a wonderful school in London called the London College of Fashion, and they do a 3-year beauty makeup course. So I started there. I wanted to do medical makeup. Our last year of college, we would have to go to, I'm literally helping people with severe burning to correct it. And I would go to we would go like a work release. You would go to a burn unit, and I'd get there and these people were terribly disfigured and everything, and I'd get so emotional and start crying. So after about a month, the administration called me into the office and said, look, you know, we're really trying to make people happy here. And basically you're depressing them. You know, you come here and you're crying and you're not cut out for this. So I was devastated. And I thought, okay, well, I've trained in all this makeup. I'll try a different route. So that's how I got into film.
Mia.
Nice. Juilliard has a wig and makeup program that they have, and they take 2 people to the apprenticeship program a year. And luckily, back in I think 2001 or 2000, I was one of the people selected. I applied and I got into that program. And thank God, you know, because like from there, it was like I just met, you know, different designers and connected with different people. I think right after the internship, I went and worked for Tom Watson at the Santa Fe Opera, and I came back and worked for him at the Metropolitan Opera and Omaha Opera, and I think the Bolshoi Ballet came through the Met and worked for them, and so, you know, I did that, and it was nice because all along the way, it's like I picked up different skills that I use now in film and TV, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Gotcha. And what are you guys currently working on? Projects?
I'm currently working with on a movie with Denzel is directing, Michael B. Jordan is starring. It's called A Journal for Jordan, and it's a true story of a New York Times journalist who marries a veteran and he gets killed in Iraq, and he leaves this journal for his son. And it's a bestseller, New York Times bestseller novel that Denzel and Todd Black have wanted to do for a decade, just to honor the troops, really.
Nice, nice. What about you, Mia?
I'm currently working on a project with Anne. We don't actually start shooting until June. But it's a Netflix project. I don't know if I'm allowed to. I think I said before.
Maybe
I'm
not.
saying I can't. It's going to be a good one. I can say it's 1980s. 1980s. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. It's been a pleasure talking with you both. Thank you so much for being here and for all that you do, especially being Black women in this industry, making it do what it do. So you all are inspirations. So
thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
There. Bye.
All right. Take care.
Pleasure.
Bye. Bye. Matiki.